Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something really interesting, something that's been kind of bubbling up in modern. It's this question of why some characters, these quote-unquote strong female characters, seem to fall flat with audiences, even though there's clearly, a real appetite for female badass. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Our main source material for this deep dive is a YouTube video. It's called This Is Why People Hate Girlboss Movies from the Brandon Morse channel. And it also references other discussions and critiques out there.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to unpack the arguments, the nuances in these critiques. We want to kind of separate genuine appreciation for, compelling female heroes from this growing audience fatigue over what people are calling girl boss narrative. So this deep dive should give you a shortcut to understanding the core issues and maybe find some surprising insights along.
Okay, so starting with that idea of fatigue, it makes you wonder, are audiences actually tired of all strong women leading roles? Because, think about characters like Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, Beatrix Kiddo, Buffy Summers even. They're roundly beloved. Video points out they definitely don't suck. So it seems like there's always been an appreciation for powerful female characters, right?
Right. But what's interesting is this specific concept the sources bring up, girl boss fatigue. Mm-hmm. As they define it, it's this growing wearying. Audiences are tired of female characters who seem unrealistically perfect, often without, earning their skills or having relatable flaws. And it's usually, the argument goes, to push some kind of social or political message.
Okay, so reheated.
Exactly like that. The source likened it to reheated food at a cheap Chinese buffet. Audiences feel like they're getting the same stale narrative over and over. And the video argues this reheating has been going on for 5 years now, so people are just tired.
That reheated food analogy, yeah, that really hits home. But is it just the repetition? Or is it something specific about what's being reheated? The video uses Ballerina as a key example. The argument there was that this film actually did offer something fresh. Eve Macro, the lead. She had good motivation. She earned her ass-kicking abilities.
Right. And importantly, the film acknowledges that the character is a female who has female limitations.
Yes. And it also doesn't neuter the universe to artificially sell her girl boss power. It felt grounded, according to the critique.
And yet, connecting this to the bigger picture, look at Ballerina's box office. It initially bombed, pulled in only about $25 million opening weekend.
Ouch.
Yeah. Now, it did eventually manage to squeak by, made back its production costs with $91 million globally.
Yeah.
But the critique's point is that it didn't deserve to fail like that initially. The perception fueled by this fatigue was that it was just another warmed over plate of Kung Pao lectures with extra gender politics, even if it wasn't.
So the fatigue actually hurt a potentially good movie.
That's the argument. It shows how past content, or maybe badly received content, can really taint the reception for new stuff, even if the new stuff tries to do it right. It raises a big question, about how preconceptions shape audience reactions.
That is a crucial point. Okay, so if the issue isn't inherently the badass woman, what is it then? The sources seem to make a sharp turn here.
They do. The argument pivot. It's not about badass women, they say. It's about badly written self-inserts from bad writers.
Self-inserts? Okay, explain that a bit. Isn't some level of writing from experience normal?
Oh, absolutely. And the sources acknowledge that. Self-insertion isn't always bad. Sometimes it can really elevate the characters. If it comes from actual lived experience, it can add depth and realism that comes from an honest place.
But there's a negative side.
Yes. The critique focuses on what it calls obsessive ideological self-inserts. The argument is these specific, strong female girl boss characters aren't just self-inserts, they're obsessive ideological self-insert, meaning the character becomes less of a person and more of a statement. Not really a character, it's more of a statement about society's expectations of women and the defiance of them. That's how the source puts it.
Okay, so where's the line? How does it become obsessive or ideological? Is it just the message?
It seems to be about how the message is delivered and how the character is constructed. The video points out these common patterns.
Right, like they're always stronger than everyone else.
Yep, and far more experienced even when she has no experience at all. Smarter, wiser, perfect, essentially.
And her only problem is she hasn't realized her own perfection yet because she's, too busy obeying society's guidelines.
Exactly. And the climax. It's almost always her breaking free from her own mental chains and unleashing her full potential. It becomes predictable.
So it's less character arc, more activation.
You could put it that way. And this is where the critique connects it to neo-feminist messaging, and intersectional sociopolitical commentary, the video gives examples like Barbie's anti-patriarchy message or that anti-capitalism side plot that went absolutely nowhere in The Last Jedi.
Ah, okay.
The end result, according to this analysis, is you get a female protag with all the depth of a gym floor shower who's basically there to deliver a lecture about how our Western system is bad. It's described as a self-insert on a soapbox.
Right. So to make this concrete, the sources must give some examples of characters that really embody this issue for them.
Oh, definitely. They dive into specifics.
Like She-Hulk. I remember that getting a lot of discussion.
It did. And the source video we're looking at has a very strong take. It claims the writers, and this is a direct quote, took a courtroom-centric show and turned it into an anti-male slog made by single 30-someths with a drinking problem.
Wow, okay. That's like his blunt.
It is. Very pointed. And it reflects the frustration the source is describing. The analysis even adds that the only character that I could relate to in that entire show was Mr. Immortal.
And there was Velma, the animated series. What was the take there?
Similar criticisms, according to the source. Spearheaded by Mindy Kaling, it was seen as blatantly anti-male, having a stupid plot, being woefully unfunny.
And weirdly, no Scooby-Doo.
Right, which, for Scooby-Doo related property is a choice.
Okay, and the critique also mentions Kathleen Kennedy in relation to Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Yes, the video calls her the queen of all self-inserters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it does say this hasn't been really confirmed. It's more of an observation based on perceived pattern.
Patterns like?
Well, between Rey Palpatine in Star Wars and Helena Shaw in Indy 5, the source points out similarities like brunette hair and spunky know-it-all attitude.
And this supposed penchant to ruin everything that they're a part of.
That's the phrasing used, yeah. There's even this anecdote mentioned, maybe apocryphal, about Kennedy interrupting pitches to suggest, and what if he didn't get the girl, but instead he got the dog? So the perspective presented in the source is that these characters feel like replacements for two aging men, Luke Skywalker and Indiana Jones, who apparently need to get out of the way for their far more capable and competent female protege. That's the interpretation offered.
Okay, so that covers the critique of what audiences supposedly dislike. But what about the flip side? What do they love? The source is pretty clear. Society loves a good female badass. And intriguingly, it even says, many people like a well-written Mary Sue, which sounds contradictory at first.
It does a bit, doesn't it? But the prime example they use to explain this is Ys from Stellar Blade. Apparently, she's the most popular character in video games right now, described as the epitome of a badass bad.
And she is kind of a Mary Sue.
The source suggests she has those qualities, yeah. Something of a Mary Sue, but crucially, people still love her.
So, why? What makes Eve work where others, according to this critique, fail?
Well, the video offers a very candid explanation. It says, quote, "The boobs help."
Huh, okay. Direct.
Very direct. But it immediately follows up saying a large part of it is that there's no message behind the sword swinging and jiggle physics. Eve is just slaying her way through monsters. She's not overlaying the adventure with a lecture about how monster slaying is overrepresented by men.
Ah, so it's the absence of the perceived lecture that makes her appealing, even with Mary Sue traits.
That's the core argument presented. And it's backed up with other examples of beloved female badasses. Think your Forger from Spy X Family, Makoto Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell, Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan. They're all cited.
And there's that interesting bit about Freyrin from Freyrin, Beyond Journey's End.
Yeah, that was fascinating. The source mentioned some of her lines in episode 10, calling them the coldest lines. Apparently so intense they trigger mental health hotline prompts on YouTube. Right. But the point is, these characters, Yor, Makoto, Mikasa, Freyrin, they're all interesting, all beloved.
Which leads the source to ask that question.
The East gets it, why can't the West? Implying there's a difference in how these characters are approached in, say, Japanese anime and manga versus some Western media.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What's the fundamental takeaway from the source's perspective?
I think the core insight they're driving at is this. Audiences aren't actually rejecting strong women. It's a misreading. What they're rejecting or reacting negatively to is what the source calls narcissists wearing those characters as a map.
Narcissist, meaning the writers.
That's the implication. The video argues this narcissism starts in the writer room, where these talentless, ideologically obsessed hacks have no business being. Strong words again.
Very strong.
And it continues, saying they're just writing self-insert fan fiction, which usually involves them putting their socio-political opponents in their place through the power of feminist perfection.
So the distinction they're drawing is between writers who serve the character versus writers who serve themselves or their ideology using the character.
Exactly. The analysis contrasts classic badasses like Sarah Connor and Ripley, who were written by people who respected the character more than they loved themselves, with some modern examples. These modern ones, the critique argues, are written by people who obsess over themselves more than they respect the character.
And the result is
a lecture in a wig instead of a hero in a struggle.
That phrase really captures the essence of the critique, doesn't it? Lecture in a wig.
It does. And the source argues there's a wider consequence here, too.
Which is?
That this trend, this fatigue, has actually ruined it for all the other women that are actually fun and entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
Including, going back to the earlier example, one Eve Macro from Ballerina.
So the poorly executed stuff actually harms the reception of the genuinely good stuff, creates collateral damage.
That's the concern raised. Yeah, it poisons the well, so to speak, for well-written female leads.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the main point seems clear from the sources we looked at. Audiences don't hate strong women.
No.
They hate being lectured. They want female badass characters that doesn't come stock with a wagging finger and a chip on her shoulder.
Right. It boils down to wanting authentic struggle, earned power, compelling story, not just a platform for an agenda, however well-intentioned it might be.
It leaves you thinking, though. Well, given this analysis, this idea of fatigue and missteps, what's the audience's role? Beyond just, not watching something or swiping left, as the source puts it.
That's a really provocative question to end on.
Yeah.
How can audiences collectively signal what they want more effectively? How do we encourage the return of those really compelling, character-driven female heroes that resonate deeply, rather than characters who feel more like perfect statements, something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over?